Headed on up, analysts say the Dow is set to hit 20,000. What's driving their bullish predictions? Wendy's sales slump and the chain blames the presidential election? We explain. Then, she's a strong woman in a male-dominated field. How Morgan Stanley's Carla Harris climbed the corporate ladder and her advice for getting ahead. As more drones crowd the skies, one startup is out to protect the pilots. We sit down with the CEO of Verifly. Plus, Delta's no good, very bad week, fact-checking Donald Trump, and a car matchmaker hooks up Fortune with a pretty sweet ride. This is Fortune Live, happening now. Welcome inside our Fortune studios. It's Thursday, August 11th, and I'm Ann Vandermeer.
And I'm Andrew Nuska. We have a lot of news to get to today. So here to help us out are Fortune's Assistant Managing Editor, Brian O'Keefe, and Deputy Digital Editor, Stephen Gandel. Guys, welcome.
Thank you.
So we're going to do this a little differently. Actually, Stephen, you've done this once before. I'm going to read a quote by a newsmaker, and we're going to kind of react to it, all right? So the first one is Wendy's CEO, Todd Penegor. He says, when a consumer's a little uncertain around their future and really trying to figure out what this election cycle really means to them, they're not as zapped to spend as freely as they might have even just a couple of quarters ago. And of course, he's talking about kind of economic uncertainty. Stephen.
Well, I think this is kind of like the weather excuse that CEOs use all the time. I think he's right in that, and we've seen it in the market this year. I think he's right that the election is causing some uncertainty. And we've also seen it with kind of corporate spending, which has been slow for a long time, but we don't see a lot of like corporations going out and doing some big spends. So I think that is increasing uncertainty and volatility in the economy. I don't see why that hits fast food sales, but okay.
Where's the beef, Todd? The consumers are zapped. He's getting zapped for this statement, which is just ridiculous. I mean, there's a lot. He cited other things as well, but like, if I'm nervous about the election or feeling anxiety, I'm going to get a Baconator, not like be too frozen at home to go seek one out. So.
And you're actually right. I mean, McDonald's and Dunkin' Donuts actually reported growth at the same time. So you're probably right there.
Okay, let's move on to our next quote. This person is a little more optimistic. It's Howard Silverblatt, a senior index analyst. And he says the one-year target price for Dow Jones Industrials will reach 20,004, a 7.9% projected gain. What do you guys think? Is the Dow going to hit 20,000 by the end of the year?
Well, first of all, Howard's not exactly saying that. He's saying that if you look at the different price targets for all of the Dow 30 members, and then you kind of aggregate that, that implies that the Dow is going to be over 20,000, but which it's a model, right? So put some, grain of salt on it. And the journal on a comeback said, well, if you look at the Fed model, that's predicting the Dow is going to go to 68,000, right? So models are flawed. I think everyone, I mean, Donald Trump said this week, it's not a lot that, is widely agreed upon on Wall Street with Donald Trump, but he also said this week that stocks look overvalued, and I think that's a general consensus of where we are.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, Howard is extrapolating from these analyst estimates. Analysts are notorious for not being super accurate when they're estimating.
And being bullish.
And being bullish, yeah, and only putting sells on after the stocks drop and everything. I mean, in 1999, we were talking about Dow 30,000. This is an aging bull market. I don't know how rigorous Trump's analysis is of the market. I would say it's not a bubble because people are debating whether or not it's still going to keep going up. In a bubble, everybody's convinced it's still going up.
But we have above average valuation for the stock market at a time of below average growth. I mean, that's not a recipe for higher markets.
This is one of the longest bull markets that we've seen in the last 100 years. At some point, it's going to turn down. But
we have both Trump and Clinton speaking in the economy this week. What do you guys think they're going to say? Or what do you think Clinton's going to say? What did Trump say?
Clinton's going to hit Trump on creating an economy for the 1%. And the thing that I think is wrong about a lot of the Trump, so there's been a whole thing of like you can't pin Trump down. He's not. Is he because he's proposing infrastructure spending at the same time he's proposing cutting taxes, and it seems like that's from both sides of the aisle. But we took all of the things that he's proposed recently, the economic policies and a few of his foreign policies, and we put them together on this kind of chart, where it's like this side was Republican, this side's Democrat. Most of the stuff, this is what I found after the speech, that most of the stuff falls in the Republican category. He's more traditional Republican than people think.
Well, the reason that is true is because that speech was a concentrated effort by his campaign to get him back on track, because he's been going off the rails with some of the things he said. He came out on Monday to try to give a speech that would appeal to the Republican base, to talk about economic issues that resonate with traditional Republican voters. And then he came out the very next day and made the comments about the Second Amendment and Hillary Clinton, which went right back to alarming people about his, sanity. Frankly.
Okay, but I think even besides the piece, the things that he hit on, which is cutting taxes, cutting regulation, and while protectionism isn't really generally part of like what Republicans talk about, we have had other Republican candidates like Pat Buchanan who have talked about protectionism. He's not that far out of the Republican mainstream.
Yeah. Well, and Hillary, I think she's going to she's trying to just let Trump say wacky stuff and appear to be very rational and have plans for everything. And so I think she's going to continue that, but probably try to tweak Trump and say that he's looking out for the richest 1% of people.
I mean,
sure. Go ahead.
Some of the things that Trump is proposing, I think, would create growth. It's a question of what happens after that. I mean, what do we do with the deficits it creates? What do we do with the kind of increasing inequality? But I think to hit him, as some people have, to hit him just like what he's going to propose is going to immediately send us into a recession, I think that's wrong.
So let's change gears. But speaking of uncertainty, Delta's CEO had quite a week. An analyst said about Delta. Okay, so Delta canceled plenty of flights this week, and the analyst said, we think that as long as there are no repeat occurrences of the issue, Delta should not see major customer defections or investors adding an extra risk premium to the shares. Do you guys buy that? All these problems? I mean, there were 2,100 flights over 3 days canceled this week, including my wife's. So do you really think this is not going to be an adverse impact on Delta? That's right.
I mean, I think he's right about the customers. I think you have a hard time. I mean, delays and cancel flights are an endemic problem in the airline business. So I don't necessarily think he's going to lose customers, but I think the airlines are hitting a bigger problem. They've had a little bit of a good run here, but now price competition is coming back, and this clearly shows that they need to spend more on technology. It's going to hurt the bottom line.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I basically agree with that. I think people are worked up about it this week, and they're upset. And I mean, I flew Delta twice recently, and I had delays both ways, and that was before the computer problem. Which actually, Delta has an older fleet of planes, which is a conscious decision they made compared to some of their big competitors. It's particularly tough for the CEO because he's only been on the job for a few months. The previous CEO retired and the president was promoted, and now he's got this mess. But I do think people tend to move on. They're really, really worked up, but there's only so many choices, and they go on orbits or whatever, and they look for the best flight for them, and they hold a grudge, but at some point they'll fly again.
Yeah, I want to come back to what you said earlier, Stephen, about the technology. I mean, that's what really surprised me. Even despite the old fleet, the Delta flights I've been on, they've clearly rehabbed the planes very well and all that. But I wrote down here what actually happened, at least up to date, and they said, a part failed, it caused a power outage, that caused a small fire, that caused a transformer in the data center to blow, that caused the power to go out, then it was restored, critical systems didn't switch over to backups, the whole thing basically crashed, and then they had to reboot, and that didn't go so well. I mean, if you're looking at this, are you asking yourself, how could you not have that kind of redundancy? As a major corporation?
I mean, I think what has happened is a lot of these airline mergers have happened. And when the mergers happen, they promise shareholders a lot of cost savings. But at the same time, they have to patch together two computer networks. Right. And they're not spending a lot of money doing that. They're just kind of doing it with duct tape. And I think that with that, you run into issues like this.
Yeah.
But I also think it's kind of happens in all kinds of industries. You don't know how big a problem you have until all of a sudden you have that problem. You're like, whoop, we didn't plan for that redundancy.
And I think that's what is scary about this. You see this old technology causing a huge blackout. If there were hackers, if there was something beyond just a power outage, this could be really bad.
Terribly.
Okay, but let's move on. It's time to play everyone's favorite game, Flop or Fly. All right, we have 3 headlines, and you guys are going to predict whether they're going to be successes or failures. So the first one, Burger King is set to launch the Whopperito, a hamburger burrito. What do you think? Andrew, flop or fly?
Flopperito. Total flopperito. I'm sorry, 1 + 1 does not equal 3 here. Burgers, great. Burritos, great. Put them together, no thank you.
Yeah, I don't think Burger King's going to, it's a flop. I don't think they're going to be able to out Chipotle.
Yeah. I'm going fly because I love the word Whopperito. First of all, I love to say Whopperito. Second of all, I haven't thought much about Burger King in quite a while, years. Now, it got my attention at least. I like it. I like the creativity and I like the language.
I completely agree. I think innovation in food is to be lauded. Whopperito sounds great. Okay,
Pickles.
Sounds painful.
FYI.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Bring it on. Okay, next headline. Disney is making ESPN streaming service without ESPN's best content. Flap or fly? Stephen?
I mean, I think they're smart in addressing it. It's been a slow bleed for them, losing viewership. I don't know if this kind of half move makes sense, but I think it's right to address it, so I say fly.
I think it's a fly. What they're actually doing, this investment in this technology, this company, which is, got incredible streaming technology, and I think they have to do something. They have to disrupt themselves before, their audience goes away. Also, it reminds me of when I was a kid and we would go to the beach and before we had cable and ESPN didn't have the rights to Major League Baseball or anything, and they had like ping pong. And I would sit there and watch it. So I imagine some kid today watching their streaming version of ESPN's secondary sports, and I like that idea.
Yeah. Okay, last headline. Apple is said to plan its first pro laptop overhaul in 4 years. Andrew, what do you think?
Massive fly. I've been waiting for this for too long, which is kind of the dent in that armor. But it's a fly. Who doesn't want a nice shiny new laptop?
It's a fly because they need to do it and everybody wants it, but it's also a flop because it shows weakness. Their sales have been a little weaker. The sales of iPads have not met projections. They're trying to do something to get people coming back and buying their products more often again.
Yeah, I think it's a flop. I don't think it's going to make a big dent I don't think it's going to get anyone else to run out and buy a laptop.
Yep. All right. Moving on, thank you so much, gentlemen. I appreciate it. As we mentioned, Hillary Clinton will soon be delivering what her campaign is calling a major speech on the economy. It's essentially a rebuttal to the economic speech Donald Trump gave on Monday. Fortune's Ben Geyer has been busy fact-checking that address. Take a look.
The United States also has the highest business tax rate among the major industrialized nations of the world at 35%. It's almost 40% when you add in taxes at the state level, and in many cases and many states, it's much higher than that.
In his first major economic address of the 2016 general election campaign, Donald Trump suggested that U.S. businesses pay a higher corporate tax rate than almost anywhere else in the world, of around 39%. And that's true if you look at the baseline federal corporate tax and state corporate taxes, but it is not true when you consider that there are lots of loopholes and deductions that companies are able to take. When those are taken into account, the U.S. corporate tax rate is closer to around 27%, which is pretty much in line with our peers. Donald Trump has proposed a tax rate for corporations of around 15%, which is much, much lower than other countries. And he hasn't proposed any way to make up that budget shortfall by proposing cuts or anything else to the federal government. Now, this speech was full of a lot of economic plans, and there are a couple others I want to fact check. Here's the first one.
Nearly 12 million people have been added to the food stamp, and these people are growing, and it's growing so rapidly since President Obama took office.
So Donald Trump is right that a lot of people have been added to the food stamps rolls while President Obama has been in office, around 13 million. But a similar number of people were added while George W. Bush was in office. And if you look at the last 2 years, the amount of money America has spent on food stamps as a percentage of the GDP has actually gone down. That means that yes, a lot of people are being added to the rolls, but the amount of money we spend compared to the amount of money America creates is actually going down. Let's fact check one more of Trump's claims.
You cannot ever start a small business under the tremendous regulatory burden that you have today in our country.
This one is clearly Trump being fairly hyperbolic. It's not literally impossible to create a small business in the United States today, as you can see by the fact that they do in fact still get created. He is right, though, that the number of small businesses created in the last 8 years has slowed. This could be because of new regulations, but it also could be because of things like wage stagnation, difficult access to capital, and just a generally tough economic period that's made people less likely to want to take a risk and start a small business. This speech had more specifics than Trump usually gives, but if you look into some of the details, it's clear he might still need his own fact checker on staff.
Carla Harris is the vice chairman of wealth management at Morgan Stanley. She chairs the National Women's Business Council, a group that advises Congress and the president on issues that impact women business owners. And she's a singer who has sold out several concerts at Carnegie Hall. So, in short, she's very successful and pretty inspirational. I had a chance to sit down with her earlier this week. A lot of people are saying maybe we're headed for a recession this year. What's your take?
Well, I have to tell you, Ann, I am a perennial bull, so let's start there. First of all, and I actually think that the technicals are in place for a continued good market environment. You still have record cash sitting on the sidelines and many corporate balance sheets. That money has to be deployed. It has to be invested. You still have record low interest rates, which is the right kind of environment that you need, again, for growth and continued investments. The labor numbers continue to look good, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of signs in the offing right now for inflation. So the technicals are in place for a continued good economy. Now, the thing that will rain on that parade is the uncertainty, right? And there's a lot of uncertainty around the world. There's uncertainty around a big political election in this country. So those are the things that will cause moments of volatility in the market, no question.
Looking at the upcoming presidential election, is there a candidate that you think would be better for business and the economy?
Well, I have to tell you, the market always likes to handicap. And, you know, traditionally, you would hear people say that if it's a Republican presidency, then it would have this impact. If it's a Democratic presidency, it would have a different impact. And I think it's very difficult to call, because I think in this environment, because you have two entities, if you will, that the market has never seen, I think the jury is out with respect to how the market will react. The market has never seen a woman president, so they've got to try to figure out how to handicap that. And they've never seen someone who's not been a career politician. So you got to figure out how to handicap that. So I think there's going to be a lot of uncertainty as people try to play what they think the outcome will be. Because I don't think it'll be about the old way, the Democrats versus the Republicans. I think it'll be about the uncertainty of the new entity.
I'd love to talk a little bit about your personal career. One of my favorite stories is that while you were at Harvard, you had a professor that said, maybe don't go into math, and then you majored in economics.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yes, you know, in the freshman year at Harvard, you're supposed to declare your major. And I was thinking about government, and I was thinking about economics. And Ec 10 is the course that all the freshmen take if you're interested in economics. And I had a tough time with some of the concepts there, but I ended up doing well in the course, but it was a hard road. So I went to the tutor that was responsible for my section in that course, and he said, whatever you do, don't major in economics because you can't think. Well, and I have to tell you, I'm negatively motivated. So when you tell me I can't do something, I'm all over it. So I went right over to the freshman dean's office and I declared economics and government at that time as my major. Yes.
That's fantastic. And then you said, you know, this negative motivation, it carried you through.
Oh, absolutely.
Morgan Stanley as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just one of those things that sort of pushes you when people say that you really can't do it. And one of my favorite moments going back to college was when I found out that I was graduating magna cum laude in economics. This guy was still there getting his PhD, and I found him in the economics library and said, thank you very much. I'm marching tomorrow, magna cum laude in economics. Thank you for the motivation. So the moral of that story is never let anybody else count you out. You know, if you think you can do it, keep your foot on the gas. Don't look left, don't look right, look straight ahead and keep going. You know, maybe you'll get there, maybe you won't, but you'll have the satisfaction of knowing you gave your best to try.
You've spoken before saying that, you know, you looked at being a minority and being a woman as not an insurmountable challenge as you were coming up. Mm-hmm. You know, in retrospect, does it seem like, you know, it was a big deal or not?
No, I would say, and I always say to women today, don't feel intimidated if you're the only woman in the room, and certainly don't feel intimidated if you're the only woman of color in the room. You frankly have an advantage, because if you're the only one in the room, all eyes will be on you, make no mistake. And so that gives you a ready audience. All you have to do is deliver.
That's a big ask, though.
Well, you're going to deliver anyway. You came into the room ready to deliver, right? So deliver. Yeah. Right? And they're paying attention. You will have an impact because you're not an also-ran. You're not like everybody else around that table. The other thing I say is don't forget your voice. Your voice is at the heart of your power, right? When you submerge your voice, you become irrelevant. So if you want to make sure that you recognize your power and that you're seen in that room, you have to exercise your voice. And the third thing I will say is that if you have been invited into the room, you're supposed to be in the room. So own that. And you have a responsibility to contribute.
That I think that is great advice. So a lot of people in the studio have mentioned to me that you are an amazing singer, and they are clamoring for
oh
a
my
song.
Goodness.
I don't know if that's.
Oh boy. Okay. Okay. All right. So how about this? This is called "Expect to Win," and it's number 10 off my last album, Unceasing Praise. expect to win. No matter what you're up against, don't give up, don't give in. Oh, yes, you can. Not fear, but faith will win the race. Don't give up, don't give in. Expect to win.
Woo! That was incredible.
Well, thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you.
phenomenal.
All right, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
All right, coming up, if you've dreamed of having pizza or a pair of shoes delivered by drone, our next segment is for you. Stick around, there's more Fortune Live right after this.
According to the FAA, drone sales will spike from 2.5 million this year to 7 million in 2020. Now, not to be a buzzkill here, but as more people fly drones for fun, for profit, we're probably going to see more drone-related accidents, no? And one new company is looking at that as a business opportunity. Jay Bregman is the CEO of Verifly, which began offering on-demand drone insurance this week. Jay, thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks very much.
Walk me through how drone insurance works. Like, I come to you and I do what?
So Verifly at a high level, it delivers on-demand drone insurance for both personal and commercial users. The way that works is it's only delivered through an app. You download our app either on iOS or Android. Open it, it draws a quarter-mile circle around you, which is your coverage area, the area you're covered in case anything happens. It then also computes a price instantly based on the risks that are inside that coverage area and things like weather. And then, you accept the price starting at $10 an hour, and you get a $1 million insurance policy that also includes $10,000 of invasion of privacy cover.
Wow. Now, you have some restrictions on this, right? This is a nascent market, and there's a lot going on. What can you do? What can't you insure? You can't insure a drone near an airport, for example.
Sure. So the system will point out the areas that are too risky for us to currently insure. And by the way, there are some people that actually have the right to fly near airports,
right?
But it's just a question of being able to develop a system to work with them. There are other areas, around, like there's certain states that we're not yet live in. We're live in 40 out of 50 states, including California, Texas, Florida. And some things that we have not enabled yet are things like racing. We have the capability to offer drone racing, but we just have to learn a little bit more about the market yet.
Sure. So, if I want to get my drone insured, my flight, who else do I go to? So there's you, but who do you compete against?
Well, so that was the big problem. I became, after I left Halo, a personal drone just enthusiast, and I couldn't find anything out there that met my needs in that area. And we talked to the guys on the commercial side that were doing this for a living, and they weren't happy with the options that they had either, because they were paying as much for a drone as they were for a Cessna, for these annual insurance policies. So we thought that actually the opportunity here was much like with cars, right? It was, they're a highly democratizing force, but also they have a little bit of risk associated with them that needs to be mitigated by insurance. Likewise, drones are definitely democratizing aviation, but basically need an insurance layer as well. And we wanted to build that so that innovation could really flourish in drones as it has in cars.
Right. So obviously your target customer from day one was yourself.
That's
but
right.
Beyond that, who are you really looking at here? Are you looking at the kind of, the Silicon Valley technologists that I meet day in and day out who just love their drones, obsessed with it, fly it in their backyards all the time? Or are you looking more broadly?
No, we are looking more broadly. We do have those, including our investor, Sam Lessin of Slow Ventures, bought the first policy recently.
He loves his drones.
Massachusetts.
Yeah.
But really, commercial drone users are the fastest growing segment. And they're the guys that de facto really need insurance because they can't get any good jobs without having insurance. And that's presented them with a choice of going out and getting an expensive insurance policy, if they can even get approval for it, for each individual drone that they own, or nothing. And now we come into play with the ability for people to buy only when they're actually doing those jobs,
right.
Which is a much better deal for them. And so, it's not only the economics, but it's also just the experience is much better. We're getting people excited about insurance.
So you mentioned commercial very broadly, but what kind of industries are we talking about here? I'm familiar with real estate. I'm certainly familiar with the entertainment industry, right? Movies, production studios were among the first who were cleared by the FAA for that. What are you looking at more broadly?
So what we see is, we definitely see real estate, we see event photography, and I don't just mean weddings, I mean any kind of event that you're having, you can now purchase as you would have a normal photographer, a drone photographer.
So if you put on a big concert in New York City, you might want to photograph it professionally, right?
It's something like that,
sure.
If you could do that safely. But yeah, there are many other users in construction, surveying, and then there's a billion uses that we have not been able to see yet because the technology has not become widespread commercially like it will on August 29th when the FAA relaxes its rules.
Let's talk about the FAA a little bit. The FAA has, you talk to some people, they've limited the innovation. You talk to some, they're obviously trying to support it. It's always kind of somewhere in the middle. How are you looking at the FAA's actions as you yourself look at the growth of your business? How are you looking at it as it impacts all the industries that you mentioned and didn't even mention?
Well, what we want, as somebody who arranges insurance, what we want is we want the market to grow and to flourish as much as possible and as safely as possible. And I'm sure that the FAA, would say that they want the same thing as well. It did take a little bit of time for these new rules, this Part 107, to come out. But now that it is, you're going to be able to go take a test, get some TSA vetting like you would for TSA pre,
right.
and become a licensed drone pilot to be able to operate in all 50 states. That's really cool. And I think that will lead to tons and tons of people that are going to make this their part-time job and even their full-time job in many cases.
The hottest next industry for drones, would you say?
The hottest next industry for drones, other than insurance?
Sure.
I got to say delivery.
Delivery.
Yeah, even though everybody says that it's impossible, et cetera, I really think it's intriguing, particularly coming from someone that has built 2 businesses in the logistics space.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jay. Really appreciate it.
It was great to be here.
All right, starting next week, car fanatics from across the world will be gathering in Monterey, California for the annual Monterey Car Week, where cars will be raced, auctioned, and ogled. And it's safe to say that if you do plan to attend, you don't want to show up in a boring 4-door sedan. Fortune's Sue Calloway got some advice about what to drive from the host of Esquire Network's Car Matchmaker. Take a look.
We are here today with Spike Ferriston, Esquire Network's Car Matchmaker.
My first choice, 1965 Ford Mustang convertible. He's gonna have to buy that guy a new set of tires. Once again, I've been pulled over for driving while awesome.
Now, I love how you match the people with the potential cars. So tell me, how hard is that to really do?
Well, it's not hard, but I take it very seriously. I have a team of men and women, and we see the buyer profile. We look at budgets. We take their family into consideration, dogs, where they live, and then we use our collective car knowledge to probably come up with 5 or 10 cars that work, and then I pick the 3 I want to show. My third and final choice is a 1962 Chevy Corvette.
Who's the hardest kind of person to matchmake?
People like you, frankly. We're just having a good time and hopefully helping buyers at home and giving them a few laughs along the way. So let's find the perfect vintage car for Monterey Car Week for your readers. But I need to know a little bit about them.
They are very successful men and women who have made a lot of money running companies that end up on the Fortune 500 list.
Okay, so no budget and something beautiful and something classic, and they want to know that their money's going to be safe. All right, I've got just the car. You know what we have here?
I do.
A 1961 Mercedes 300 SL in the beautiful color of Dunkelblau, dark blue. Should we drive it?
Yes.
Let's drive it.
Go ahead, scare me.
It's a timeless, elegant design. The car originally stickered at $11,000. You know where they're at right now?
They're north of $1 million, I know that.
You're talking between 1.6 and maybe even 2 on a great day. Manual transmission, 4-speed, 225 horsepower.
I mean, it feels great from over here.
You can tell right away it's a showstopper. Up until they made this car, Mercedes was really known as a luxury brand.
It's so beautifully crafted.
Right.
But you have the thrill of the performance,
Yeah,
too.
it's heart and soul. This is a race car. This is everything you would need for this Monterey Car trip. You're going to stop people wherever you go. People take pictures of this car, they're going to love it. Your money's going to be safe, and it's just a win across the boards. There you go.
Oh, say it ain't over.
What do you
I'll take
think?
it. I'll take it. Thank you, Spike.
You're welcome. Anytime. See you next year.
And now let's talk about the Olympics for just a minute. We're heading into week 2 of the Summer Games, and while there's plenty for sports fans to love, we've also noticed there are some takeaways for business.
For instance, have you noticed all the purple circles on the bodies of this year's Olympic athletes? The marks are from the ancient practice called cupping. Some say it's therapeutic, others call it pseudoscience, but it's a clear example that, in the anti-doping age, pro athletes are just like investors and executives, always looking for an edge, even one that's thousands of years old.
I've been spending a lot of time enjoying the Olympic commercials. I think they're better than Super Bowl ads. They tug at your heartstrings, they speak to your patriotism, they celebrate human excellence. I'd like to see even the coldest person watch P&G's Thank You Mom campaign and not tear up just a little. Companies spent a record $1.2 billion on Olympic ads this year, up 20% from 2012, which seems like proof that you don't have to be edgy or even sexy to effectively sell a product.
Getting a little misty here. All right, and finally, even if you haven't been watching the commercials or the games, I'm sure you've seen this photo. It even has its own hashtag on Twitter, Phelps face. It's American swimmer Michael Phelps right before his semifinal in the 200-meter butterfly.
He went on to win a gold in that event, which means he's now won a total of 25 Olympic medals over the course of his career. That is amazing. And the lesson here, if a game face like this results in success like that, we should all find our own game face fast.
And now that does it for this week's Fortune Live. We'll see you back here next Thursday at 11 a.m. Have a great rest of the week.